passage that really just struck me, big red flags popped up.
By the way, it seems to me that in the process of this, she was reading the Bible and then seeing these things for the first time. That's why they were red flags. Because I don't think she had seen it before.
Was in Deuteronomy 22, starting in verse 28. If a man happens to meet a virgin who is not pledged to be married and he assaults her and they are discovered, he shall pay her father 50 shekels of silver. He must marry the young woman, for he has violated her. He can never divorce her as long as she lives. Now, when I read this in the earliest stages of my deconstruction journey, I was very confused, and I thought there has to be an explanation for this. There's no way that God commanded women to marry men.
Okay. First mistake, by the way. God, in the text specifically, God never commands the woman to do anything. God commands the man to do something, but never the woman. So a big, big mistake in the way you read the text, because it matters. I think she had this very naive view of God, very naive view of Christianity and theology. And she's reading this stuff for the first time. And she's like, and I'm thinking, God would never, ever do this. What would make you think God would never, ever do something like this? Like, where did you get that idea from? It is important. Where did you get your theology from? It had to be from somewhere. And this is what I mean, that I think these were the thoughts and the feelings of a 17-year-old kid who just had certain views about God that were romanticized views.
Who assaulted them if they just paid their father. Like, there's no way the Bible says this. I need to figure this out. I contacted my old pastor and I asked if I could discuss some things with him because I had some questions. So we set up a night to have dinner. I went over to his house. I pointed out this verse. And I said, what does this mean? Like, how can you justify this? And he said, yeah, this is what it says is true at that time in the culture. If a man...
By the way, again, nothing wrong with sitting down with their pastor and talking about it. And what the pastor's saying, and again, trusting her recollection of this, I would assume it would be something like, I sat down with my pastor, I talked to him, and then he gave me an answer that I wasn't very satisfied with. And then I went and read a couple of books on the subject. It would be something of that sort, but it doesn't seem to me that it is.
Did that to a woman, she would be considered unclean and not eligible to be married, and that would ruin her life. And so the best thing they could do is have him pay money to her father and buy her. And
he said that the best thing they can do is pay money to her father and buy her.
Then he'd have to marry her and he'd have to take care of her for the rest of her life. He would be obligated to do that. That is his punishment. And some people who are indoctrinated, who are taught not to question it, will just go, oh, okay, that makes sense.
What she's bringing up here is a straw man argument. This is a pure case. Some people, the people who are taught not to question this stuff, will say, "Oh, okay, that makes sense. I'm just moving on." But I was different. I questioned him. I'm not like one of those people. Or I wasn't, or whatever. If that guy told me that same exact stuff she just said, I would have said, dude, are you out of your mind? Like, that just seems not to do justice to the entire context of the passage. What else is going on in the passage? Let's look at it. Let's study it. What are the opinions on this passage?
But not me. I couldn't. I could not make sense of that. It'd be one thing if these were just rules that men made up that God did not approve of, but this is a direct law of God in the Bible. This kind of loophole for men to find a wife.
It is not a loophole for men to find a wife. We'll look at the passage and see how much of this is a loophole to find a wife.
If they just assaulted her, and then they could marry her. If they just, paid her father some money. And supposedly that was a lot of money back then, so that was a very big punishment. But
yeah, you do realize that laws, just generally speaking, are meant to be deterrents. Like, if you're going to do a crime, and the money you have, let's just say if you did some kind of a crime, And the punishment for doing the crime was you got to pay, say, I don't know, 5 years worth of wages. That is a deterrent. People don't go, oh, what a good way of finding a wife. Let me just go assault the neighbor next door so I can give up 5 years worth of wages and have to marry this girl. But again, we're going to look at the context here in a little bit.
Really? That's how we punish
No.
a man? I don't know any woman that would ever want to spend her life being married to and having to submit to the man that assaulted her. And I've had people ask me, well, what do you recommend? What's the solution? I mean, she would have been an outcast. She would have been unclean. She wouldn't have been eligible for marriage. And so what are they supposed to do? They were trying to protect her. I don't know. Maybe God could have commanded the community to come together and take care of that woman.
Yeah. Again, this is... how do I say this? How do I say this and be very, very nice? That sounds like a naive American kid. That you think that you can just command things in societies and the society goes, yeah. By the way, everybody recognizes, and here's what I mean by this. Everybody recognizes that when God's giving laws in the Old Testament, that it is societally relevant, but fixing society as well. It is not just God like uprooting and just like, unless they're like, that happens when it has to do with specific worship to God and commitment to God. And the people still don't do it. And the people still don't follow those laws. Even though the kings of Israel are told you can't have more than one wife, they end up having more than one wife. But, you know, Christy thinks God could have just said, you know what, community, come together and take care of this girl. And everybody would have said like, yeah, sure, why not? There's a complication to the way laws work in the Bible.
Maybe God could have commanded the men to marry women even if they aren't virgins. Do not worry about if...
How's that going for our culture, by the way? Women and men are sleeping around with whomever and whatever, and then they're... It's insane to me, by the way, and I was watching a podcast, as I mentioned earlier today, earlier on, and you got a 32-year-old girl sitting there and saying, yeah, you know, I have a body count of, 30-something people. I've slept with 30-something people. And then everybody, not everybody, but some of the people around her saying, wow, that's very low. Really? 30-something people by the time you're 32, 31? That's low?
This is a sickness of the highest order.
How's that going for our culture? Yes, it's okay. Go marry girls who are non-virgins. And then, like, you guys realize our society is a mess. We are a sexually perverted mess. We would sit there as a culture, we would sit there as a society and think that, yeah, fine, this is the way it should be. And it's not, guys. This is not the way it's supposed to work. And again, my thing is whenever we look at our culture and we go, oh, he could have said this to men. Maybe, maybe not. But why should we listen to you?
A woman was a virgin when he married her. That would solve the problem right there. I just came up with a better solution than God could. A
Yes.
more moral solution.
Okay.
An all-powerful deity couldn't come up with a better solution than a woman must marry the man who assaults her. That doesn't add up for me. It doesn't sit
By the way, again, we're going to look at this passage and see whether what is happening in that text.
right with my sensibilities. And so when I got that answer,
Where do you get these sensibilities from? That's an important question to ask. Like, where are these sensibilities coming from where you think X, Y, and Z? That it just doesn't correlate to that. Why are they so objective?
from him, it was not satisfactory. The justification, the apologetic response for this verse is just not satisfactory for me to find good moral value.
Whenever people talk about this sort of stuff, my response is, name me the 3 best books you've read on the subject. And if you can give me an answer to that, don't say things like the apologetic responses on this, X, Y, and Z. This is the passage. So we'll start in verse 22, not just 28. So if a man is found lying with the wife of another man, both of them shall die. There's adultery here. It's a man, and then who's sleeping with the wife of another man. And the punishment is death. Adultery, death, okay? The man who lay with the woman and the woman. This stuff, so you shall purge it out of evil. So, verse 23, if there is a betrothed virgin, so this is a woman who is betrothed to be married, engaged, and the man meets her in the city and lies with her, then you shall bring them both out to the gate of the city, and you shall stone them to death with stones. Now, why both of them? Because notice the language here. Then you shall. The language is he meets her in the city and lies with her. This is consensual. She's engaged, and both of them get the same punishment as the married because she's engaged to be married. So they both get the same punishment, which is death. And it says the young woman, because she did not cry for help, though she was in the city. So this is a young woman who could have called out for help, because if you're being assaulted, you cry out for help, which means this is consensual as well. Okay? And so she wanted this, and the man, because he violated his neighbor's wife. Notice she's betrothed, she's considered the guy's wife. Okay, so betrothed right there is the man's wife. And so she's cheating on her spouse. This guy is violated his neighbor's wife. So both of them shall be put to death. But it says, if in the open country a man meets a young woman who is betrothed. So same context, but now it's not in the city, nobody can hear her. And the man seizes her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. Did you get that? So the guy dies because you shall do nothing to the young woman. She has committed no offense punishable by death. So why is it in this case the guy is put to death, but the woman is not? There must be a reason for this. Instead of it being, well, he shall go and pay whatever amount that he's going to pay and marry her. His crime is punishable by death because they're in the open country. For this case is like that of a man attacking and murdering his neighbor, because he met her in the open country, and though the betrothed young woman cried for help, which means she didn't want to sleep with this guy, there is no one to rescue her. So therefore she's not punished. He is. The example she's giving would only be applicable in this case, where the guy assaults her and then they go, got to get married, okay? But if she's already engaged, it doesn't say break off the engagement, none of that stuff. The person who's committed this crime is put to death. Now here's where we get to the verse that she brought up. If a man meets a virgin who is not betrothed, so this is a woman who's not betrothed, and seizes her and lies with her, and they are found, not he is found. We just had a situation where it's only the guy that's put to death, but they are found. So here's what a proper understanding of this is this is a guy who meets a woman who's not betrothed, she's not engaged, and seizes her and lies with her, seduces her and lies with her. She's seduced, and she is also not crying out for help, because earlier on we're told that they can cry out for help and so on and so forth. It doesn't mention any of that stuff. The implication is that she didn't want to cry out for help. Right? So this is a consensual relationship. Then the man who lay with her, who seduced this woman, shall give the father of the young woman 50 shekels of silver. Now, nowhere in here does it say he's buying her or whatever like that, because this is the price of a dowry. It's the price that any woman, any man's family would have had to pay any woman's family. And she should be his wife. But it doesn't also say that she's forced to be his wife. It seems to be the case here, and plenty of commentators agree with this, that both the woman and the father could have refused this marriage. And the violated her here has to do with the sexual act. But this is a guy who seduces a woman. Not I don't want to say the word, assaults her, and she's crying out saying, someone help me, I don't want this. And then everyone's like, no, you guys got to get married. Because earlier on, we saw that these people who are doing this are put to death. And if he seduced her and he slept with her, he may not divorce her. So the right to getting a divorce, which is in the law of Moses, is taken away from him. He is held responsible for his actions. It seems to me very clearly that in this passage, nothing is really said whether they could have refused or not, but plenty of people think that it was a very big possibility that the father or the woman would have said, no, we don't want this guy, he's a scumbag. Or it could be that she might have said, yes, I like this guy. If our understanding is correct, that the seizing her and lying with her, okay, and some translations do translate that as rape, but the reality is that we get a description. We don't get a word for that in the text. The description we get earlier on is a woman crying out. When a woman is crying out and that's happening to her, that is rape. If a woman is not crying out, contextually speaking, starting in verse 22 and on, then it seems that this is consensual.